Welcome everybody for end of April. Braincasting you, or broadcasters, I guess. Podetize. I know. I'm so used to the old name. Sorry, but Podetize private client webinar. We want to talk today primarily about website maintenance. Is the major subject because although we're a podcasting company, as most of you, if not all of you know, your website is a key integral part of your podcast. It should be the central hub of information for your audience, and you want to be driving them there all the time because iTunes doesn't tell you who is subscribed to your show. So we thought we'd talk about website maintenance. It's a subject we haven't really covered in depth.
So some of this is stuff that you need to do. Some of it is stuff that web developers need to help you with. So these are the list of things that I've compiled, and I have a list. It are all things that we get lots of requests for. So if you're not aware of this, that we create websites for some of our clients. And in doing so, the number one requested thing was like, how are we going to maintain this? Will you maintain it for us? So we have a web maintenance program that went in place last year. And so many of these things are the top requested things that come through our monthly web maintenance program.
Sure.
And so just so you know how it works, our monthly web maintenance, people put requests in for things that they want to update. If it's too big a project, we tell them and we push it out over multiple months. But they basically have the opportunity to, put in help tickets. There's an admit there.
Ooh, nice.
Put in help tickets and request these types of things that they need to do. Yeah, I'm always hitting the mic with my hands. That's always an issue for me. Okay, so, and what I want to say tied into what Tom was just saying is that for most of you, you may not realize this, but 60% of your podcast listens on average are happening over your website. So your website is critically important. And so if it's not happening, it's because you aren't using your website. If you're coming in and because we have DIY customers who are on this call, right? So, but 60% of the listens that happen on your podcast will happen over the website.
Really?
Yep. That's
Where'd you get that
average
number?
statistics
I didn't know that.
from many So we did a survey. So
wow.
Yeah, so where, you would be looking at listens and you don't know where they're coming from. Most often the ones that are coming straight from Google, not Google Podcasts, which is different, but straight from Google, are coming straight into your website and coming over your website to listen. So these are ones that we want to track. That's why your website's so critically important. And then last month we talked about publicity. So this is the other reason I want to tie this in. When a media person goes to look at your website, someone who's considering a TV producer or a writer for an article, and they are considering writing about you or your show, they don't just check the blog and don't just check the podcast and see that you've posted. They check your website, they check your bio, they check a whole bunch of information over your website. So if it's out of date, that's not helping you. So these are some of the top things that we have put together a list for. So the number one thing on the list is to make sure your bio is updated. I update mine twice a year at least, maybe even once every quarter.
I think we should all be looking at our bios on our websites once a quarter.
Right.
So many things I know for us change.
They change all the time. I start a new show. I got featured in something. You want to have your bios updated about that.
Like you were on Larry King.
I was on Larry King, yeah. So
yeah,
I just updated the bios. I haven't gone through and done it on the websites, but I just rewrote it. So now I will push it through and have it updated on the website. So that's going to happen. That's something you should do regularly. That's on you because you got to write that. You've got to make sure that that's updated, but you also have to make sure somebody updates the website, whether that's you or your assistant or web developer, whatever that might be. Make sure that that happens. Photos. So your profile photos, many of you put them up on your website. And if your website's a decade old, then your photo's a decade old. So we might be guilty of that.
We actually are going to have some new headshots taken soon.
So we were with our good friend Ken Rochon and Andrea Miller last night. And if you've ever been at an event and had said a keep smiling card, I don't have one with us.
I left mine downstairs, I guess.
Yeah, and so keep smiling card, then you would know who they are. And one of the things that they reminded us that is that so often we don't take pictures. And as I've been doing a lot of center of influence podcast interviews, wow, some of these top podcasters have some amazing photos of them podcasting or having the mics in their hand, or just great colorful photos that express what their show's about. And they're amazing and they look so good. So they go beyond just having a profile photo, right? So if, as you grow your show and as you get more publicity, you'll want to have some of these photos, because if I wouldn't write an article if I couldn't include 3 to 4 photos of them in that. So that's something that you want to consider also, is maybe having some photos taken. And so we're actually looking at, when we run it, we want to run an event at the end of this year, or at the fall, September, October. And we would love to run an event with all of you and have you guys come. We'd like to give you an opportunity to have that done, so they're real professional looking. So you have studio, because many of you podcast wherever you are, so you don't have a studio to take it in. It's not professional, and maybe you'd like to have some really cool colorful photos. So we're talking about creating an opportunity for that to happen for people, but that's something to definitely update on your site, right? Make sure you keep those photos update. Make sure you keep your homepage, you know, if you've got a banner photo at that, you might want to change it out every year at least. You may want to do it more often than that. It helps to give the site a feeling of newness for people who come back regularly. So that's always a good one to do. Social links. Sometimes you forget that you just added Instagram and you haven't updated your site, right?
We just added Instagram recently.
Right.
And especially now that Instagram has Instagram TV and is doing a lot of video, and you can put audiograms of your podcast if you're into that up there. So yeah, we had to add Instagram. So
you have to add your social links. So keep that updated. Sometimes the links change. You need to correct that. So I just had that issue with the New Trust Economy. I was able to get the YouTube, my vanity URL that says New Trust Economy. So I updated the original link that was a weird number character, you know, set of things to the new URL, because that's what you want to have. It would have still gone to the same place, but you want to have it so that if people were clicking through it, they would see that new URL. So you want that happening. Now I'm going to say these 3 items, these 4 items technically.
Next ones.
Yeah, are all legally important to your site. Okay.
And I think often forgotten. So if we're doing your blog post for you, we've probably gone through and at least looked at it. Or if we built your website, we definitely did that. But copyright. The copyright lines on the bottom of your websites, some of them are really outdated. I've checked them out. Some of them are just 2018, but some of them are really outdated. And so we want to really make sure you've got to keep your copyright updated, or you're not alerting people to the fact that this copy, the text, are owned by you, right? So that they are yours. And so that copyright line is really critically important. If someone starts reposting your content somewhere else and you don't have your copyright in place, you may not have a takedown opportunities. You may not have as much legs to stand on as you do. Well,
right?
we're not attorneys.
We're not attorneys.
So let's make that clear. But I think it's a good idea to keep these things updated.
Privacy policy, terms and conditions.
Or terms of use.
Or terms of use, yes, right? Contact us. Those 3 things are required by law on any site that is capturing cookies, that is capturing emails, that is running any kinds of transactions.
Yeah, any e-commerce.
Any e-commerce. So anything that you might be doing, you've got to have these things in place. And many of you, I find, don't have contact us pages, because you're like, oh, well, our information's at the bottom of the site or whatever that is. You actually have to have a contact us linked page that can go to. And a form is not good enough that just is a contact us, send us an email. You actually have the contact information there. They has to be visible on your site.
I want to make a point. That doesn't mean if you don't want the contact page to be up in your top navigation and like in everyone's face, it doesn't mean it has to be there. It just has to be a page on your site. It could be a footer, little link in the footer of every page of the site. It
right. And
it can be subtle.
More important thing is that from the privacy policy, You have to be able to click that contact us link in the privacy policy, and a page opens up with that information. So you do not have to make it navigatable, as Tom referred to, but you do have to have a page like that. So there's a bunch of things like that need to get updated in your sites. If you're not in compliance with the new laws, European laws, and all of the things that have gone into place, you really do need to get those things updated. On a side,
this is important, actually. If any of you were on the call from the very beginning, we talked about a recent attack on our site, and we'll cover that again toward the end for any of you that missed it. But we're finding a lot of WordPress websites are getting spammed with, I don't know what else to call them, but bogus comments on blogs. If you have comments turned on your blog, on your WordPress blog, people can submit comments, and that doesn't mean they go live on your site without your permission. You have to review them and approve them, but still, I mean,
it's kind of brute force attacking your comments field with a bot. And so what happened to us on one of our sites that has over 450 blog posts.
Not Podetize.
I'm sorry, 550 blog posts.
Not Podetize.
Not
it was
Podetize.
A different website.
Website. And we ended up with 27,000 comments. Pending comments that were all bogus, that were all spam. And so that's, kind of that's cumbersome to your site. It's attacking your site. It's in some ways it's a Trojan horse. You start clicking through and approving, or have them on auto approve. That would be just horrible on your site. But for us, it was because of the number of posts we had. And yes, I can tell everyone how to turn off the comments in 30 seconds. Yes.
Mitch says, yeah.
And that is exactly,
we'll cover that.
Definitely want you to turn the comments off. That's what we've discovered. So this is my recommendation. It is not the recommendation of many, many bloggers out there, but they may be operating under some old school models. But here's what we've seen. The comments is all spam nowadays. We have less than, I would say, 0.25% of useful comments that happen over our website. All the comments are happening on social right now. So there really is no reason to keep the comments open. So as Mitch was referring, in the settings section of,
yes,
I do.
Okay, good.
In the settings section of your WordPress website, I'm only commenting on WordPress sites. I do not know how to operate a Squarespace or anything. But on a WordPress site, there's settings field. And in the setting, you have general, sharing, you have all of these different subheadings, options, right? And you go onto the one that is quick edit on every post. Yeah, you know what? Mitch is mentioning quick edit on every post. When you have 450 posts, you won't want to do that. So if you go into your general settings, there's a section under commenting, right? There's a whole section for it. And it's really simple.
So
you just turn it.
Setting,
there's
right?
A global setting where you can turn comments off on any post older than a day. And so that's the way to get it to automatically turn off all the ones that existed already, and you get them gone because they're older than a day. And then from that point forward, you set them so that they would turn off, they would never show. And so you actually have no comments posting on any single one. You can, on your most recent, if you don't have a lot, you can go into quick edit on your posts in your blog section, and you can click turn off, and
which is kind of nice because you don't have to go into each post.
You can just check a box and it goes off. So that is, Mitch, a really easy way if you don't have a lot, but we had 550, so I wasn't going to do it that way.
Right.
So the other couple of things that I really want to mention to you are really important to, I'm not going to call it they're important to like operations of your site or anything like that. These are important to your business. Mm-hmm. And important to publicity and important to closing sales and all of that. And that is your testimonials and your press page. Now, if you don't have a press page, you probably should just have a section on your About Us page or About You page. You can have it there, you can have it below or above all your bio and information. And it should be places where you've been featured in the press. And what I find is a lot of you forget that being featured on other people's podcasts, as many of you are doing this quid pro quo, I go on your show, you come on my show, but being featured on their show is press. So you need to put that into your website. We send EcoBait to your guests for a reason with embed code, because we want them to do this. So you should do the same thing. And so absolutely, you don't have to create a fancy graphic or anything like that. As long as you really have the links to the show and some information about that, that's great that you are putting that into your press page. So keep your press page updated. It's the number one thing that I find people don't do on a regular basis. Try to do it on a monthly basis. If you have an events page, keep that updated too, because when you don't update it, it looks bad. If you're not going to update it, get rid of it. It's just not worth having if you're not going to update that. But testimonials are the other really big thing that you're not updating enough.
And I find testimonials to be a very valuable part of our business in assisting sales. You know, it's kind of like, it's almost a referral without a direct referral. Sometimes, you know, someone mentioned us at an event and they come to our site and they see, you know, some either written or video testimonials, and it really greases the wheels for people to decide to, you know, go ahead and work with us. So I think testimonials are very important.
Let's say you only show 3 testimonials on your homepage because you have like one of these, you know, rotating bars that have like 3 just show up or whatever. That's okay, but change them out now and again.
Like a slider, you
like
mean?
A slider, yeah. If you've got that, change them out and change out to a different set of 3 and have a page that links to with all of them on there. It's very useful for people, because one of the things that we forget is that we do tend to, maybe we want to see on our site, people wants to see that there's a show like theirs. There are hosts that have the same message or the same mission or the same reason for doing a show. And so if we're not rotating, we may not be capturing all of that information. And so for someone who's critically important to have social proof, they want to be able to easily click that and then see, wow, there's 100 different testimonials here. So build them over time, add them in every month, be reaching out to your customers and getting them. That is really important for you to be doing on an ongoing basis, because it also helps you touch base with your clients to understand, why are they choosing you? Why are they doing business with you? Because it may be reasons that you didn't even think about, but someone reading it will go, wow, that really resonated with me. That's exactly my problem. I want to sign up. So if you haven't noticed, in our particular case, we're always checking in with you. When we do interviews with you for articles that we're writing, we're surveying you and finding out why you like us, why things are working. And we're also surveying you for what's not working too, so we can add services and make improvements. But survey your clients, do that, and ask them if you can use that as a testimonial. So you can be doing that on a regular basis. So those are a couple of things that are important to your business that I really wanted to bring up. And the other thing is that we have a lot of you have started video. So we've had about, I don't know, like
big increase in
podcasters
recording video and having us produce and put their video in their YouTube channel for them.
Right.
Not everybody, I would say 30%.
Yeah, 30%. But I think it's been growing. It's been the most requested thing, and we've been adding that a lot. So because so many of you are actually capturing the video already, you're either doing it on live stream or you're doing it in Zoom like we are, you're capturing the video, but then you're just throwing it away and using the audio. All of you are thinking to yourselves, well, why am I not using it? I have it.
Or wondering if you should. Yeah.
Wondering if you should. And so we have a program there where we do that we use that and we put them into YouTube, and we make sure that you have video casts as well as podcasts. But if you did add that, if you have added a video show in recent times, you really want to update your website to have a video player section. So you can do a playlist straight out of YouTube, and you can add a slider with that in there. You can add thumbnails of all of that, but that's something you want to add to your homepage, because people are looking for that. Oh, I'm a video watcher. I just want to go straight to the videos, and then I'll be able to link over to YouTube and subscribe. And so that's a place where you can do that. You can do that. You could, even if you were interested in you can do an Instagram slider. So you can do that from Instagram as well. So thinking about how you might want to use that in the future, those are things, if you've added them, make sure they're in your site.
I want to mention something, this is going to be specific to the WordPress websites again, which most of you have, is plugins.
Oh, yes.
So WordPress is a wonderful platform. We recommend it. We prefer it for many reasons. I'm not going to go into all that detail right now. But if you have a WordPress website, and you don't have somebody maintaining this for you, you want to check your plugins and make sure they're up to date. A lot of website performance problems and glitches can come from, plugins that have not been updated. WordPress also had a major update of its own software late last year to WordPress 5.0. That was a big change, and a lot of plugins needed to be updated as a result of it.
So many of you may not actually even know this, but our team, if we're doing your done for you production services, so we're in your blog all the time, our team regularly updates all plugins that relate to the operation of the blog. So late last year, when that WordPress change happened, we actually had our team on 24 hours a day the last week of the year, making sure that they were updating your site with the plugins, because we knew it was going to take down your blog come January 1. So yeah. And Mitch has a great suggestion. Yeah.
A free way to update all your sites, which is a URL called, well, you can all see this.
managewp.com, in case you can't see it because you're watching this on replay. Yep. So it's managewp for WordPress.com. And that is a great free way to update all your sites. But keeping that in mind, sometimes you update and it crashes your site. So really be careful. Try not to do all of them globally at once. We like to go one at a time.
And try not to do something that is irreversible.
Right.
That's
make sure you backed your site up. Use Backup Buddy.
That's the way you do that, actually. Right. Hopefully everybody's website is being backed up once a day. We install, all right. Well, so we install backup plugins if you didn't have it on every site where we're doing your work for you. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, then obviously we're not doing that. But one other thing about plugins I want to mention, as important as it is to make sure your plugins are up to date and everything's compatible and working well, if you have plugins installed on your site that are old, something you no longer use or no longer need, you want to deactivate them and or remove them, because the more plugins you have installed on your site, it's sort of, think of it as the more overhead your website has, because every time a page on your website is loaded, WordPress loads not just that page, but all the plugins of the entire site. It's just more processing, time that it takes and power that it takes. And it's just makes your site run inefficiently. So as important it is to update the plugins you're using, make sure you're deactivating and actually getting rid of uninstalling unnecessary plugins.
Right. Now, this other thing that I've got on the list is sort of related to that. Themes, forms, plugins that were paid, you have to pay attention to your subscription and renew them. So I know that sounds, basic here, but we find it happens very often.
Well, we forget about them.
Because we forget about them, or you just think it's a spam email from some company that you only do business with once a year, so you don't really think about that email that you've received. Or what happens, a lot of you have a company who does your site, and then you no longer have a relationship with them after it's built. And a year later, subscriptions start rolling in and you don't know what they are, where they came from. You think that they're spam and you don't renew them and your site goes down. So this is really important to make sure that when you've hired someone to build your website, that you are very clear on the subscriptions, you get the emails, that it's all registered with you, so that you understand that this is something I'm going to have to do every year when the renewal date comes up. So make sure you're renewing those things. Otherwise, your site's not going to look the way it's supposed to look.
Yep.
Okay. I want to make one little note to our DIYers, to the ones who are doing it yourself. If you are using PowerPress, we want you to send an email to help@podetize.com. You do not need to be using PowerPress because you're using Podetize. PowerPress has some issues that we keep coming up against for those of you who have been using it. And there's RSS feeds and information about how it reads at iTunes that is always getting messed up. And because that information is always changing, and if you're not on top of it and you're not resetting the settings properly, this one is incredibly difficult to maintain as a plugin. And so we want to make sure that you're not using it because you don't actually need it. because you have Podetize. So, so just send an email to help@podetize.com if you are still using PowerPress and you know that you're still using it because you're DIYing it yourself. So you would know that you're opting into that.
Mhm.
And then
This next one's pretty exciting. I'm really excited about.
So you guys will all be getting an email about this. Starting next week, you're going to get an email about this, and you have some options and some choices, which is really exciting. And so we use a podcast player for all the done for you production. So DIYers, this doesn't apply to you unless you actually have this yourself. We use the Smart Podcast Player.
It's a paid plugin we pay for.
Right. It's part of your package. And so the Smart Podcast Player has 3 new features they've added, which is really exciting.
Just recently updated, and we've just tested it.
Yeah, it's really great. So the first update that's really simple and easy is going to automatically happen to everyone who has a player because our team will just do it. You can add your Spotify, FM player. You can have an auto subscribe to all of those places. So we'll just be adding them for you as we update sites and work into your player and fixing these things. We'll get that part for you. You don't have to find your links. You don't have to give us that or anything. The choice things that you have, though, is they've now created a button which can go to a landing page or go to an email capture form. So a button straight on the player itself. And so if you don't know, there's that, like the big, large, it's kind of a big,
it's like a window,
big window player, and it has all your episodes listed in it. This is not on the single track player. We're talking about the big player. So it's usually on your homepage or on your podcast page. And you have an option of where you want that to go. Do you want it to go to an email capture? Do you want it to go to a landing page for something you're selling, a course, or a free download or something like that? You get to choose. So when we send the email out, we'll be asking you what you want that to be linked to. The other choice you have is a sticky player, which we've modeled so you guys can go to feedyourbrand.co. And on Feed Your Brand site, you can see the sticky player. It's like
basically what this does is on any page of your website, at the very bottom, it's like a bar on the bottom. It can be colored in your brand coloring, and it's really like a track player that you can set it to play your most recent episode. So anytime anybody goes to your website, no matter what page they go on, that sticky player is on the bottom with your most recent episode. So that's the choice
you actually have. Choice, yeah. You have a choice to put it on a specific page, so you could just put it on your podcast page or your home page. Or you can put it on all your pages. It's totally up to you what you want to do. So that's a choice you have to make. You can also choose whether you want it to play your latest episode, your first episode, or a specific episode. So maybe you have an episode that's really all about your services and what you do. You may want to do that. So on Product Launch Hazards, that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to do our 7P process as my sticky player option, because it's the number one thing. It's my number one episode. It's the episode that's most critically important if you're coming to the site for the first time.
But in general, on our other shows, I like the idea of having it be the most
latest
recent episode.
Yeah, that one's just a little bit different. So you'll get an email next week. Alexandra's going to go through the alphabet, so based on your show title, not your name. And so she'll be going through that and sending you personal emails about it, giving you your options and what you need to do. But because you guys are on the call, she told me that if you want in, all you have to do is say, I want in, Alexandra, do mine first. And so you guys just send her an email, alexandra@podetize.com, and she'll take care of it. And so
then that really covers what we want to talk today, although I do want to mention one more time, because several of you came.
No, I have one more thing too.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So
what's that?
In May, we decided we're going to move to more coaching calls.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to give you guys a heads up on the dates. So I'm going to look at it.
Well, aren't we going to email them anyway?
We will email them, but I wanted to give you a heads up. So we're going to go to weekly calls. We have so many clients now. We have a lot of people onboarding and coming in. So we have a lot of questions. And so we're going to go to weekly calls. The first one is actually going to be and I'm trying to find the dates here. The first one is going to be.
Well, you're really well prepared.
I know, really. That's really, really bad. I thought I had all the dates right in my calendar for you.
Okay, well, while you're looking that up,
I'll find it. The dates, yeah.
So yeah, we're going to more frequent webinar calls like this that you can, if you're available, you can put it on your calendar and feel free to join. and getting into some, different subject areas too, which should be great. But let me go to the other thing. So in the last 36 hours, any of you that have experienced really slow page load times on podetize.com, when you're going into the dashboard to upload your episode requests or to look at your stats or do anything, it's been horribly slow. We were the victim of a brute force attack that happened sometime between Wednesday night to Thursday morning. And it's one of those things where servers in other countries kept trying to log into our website. They don't have any login credentials. They didn't have any information to get into anything. They're just entering, any old information in the username and the password fields and then hitting submit. And of course, they didn't get in, but when they do it hundreds of thousands of times repeatedly, it eats up all your server bandwidth. It was terrible and ridiculous. So it took about 36 hours to get through that. It is resolved. And now the website is operating actually really fast. So if any of you that had trouble uploading any episode requests and gave up on it, which I wouldn't blame you for at all, you can go back and do it now, and everything's really in great shape. And this also caused us to look at our whole IT server infrastructure, and we're making other major improvements.
Which were in plans already, but
we accelerated some of them. Some of them are happening over this weekend. Some will be happening into next week. So just understand that. And if you had any trouble, we apologize. It was completely unexpected. And we're also in these changes we've protected ourselves against a similar kind of attack happening in the future. Yeah. Really random. It's not like anybody specifically wanted to take us down. They just it's just a malicious attack. I can't believe how many people actually have enough time in their day or in their lives to just make trouble, because there was no financial gain.
It's probably an algorithm somewhere, and it just randomly picks servers and picked things.
Why
so
even write that algorithm?
It happens all the time. And so I apologize, guys, but the dates didn't feed through to my phone. They didn't push through to my phone. So I don't have the dates for you on our new coaching calls, but we will email you. So they're going to, not starting next week, though. Yes, we will still the last Friday is always
the last Friday of every month.
Yep. Yeah. But understand that most of those coaching calls will just be Q&A. No, not as much of what we do teaching here. And there will be a lot more starter people on those calls. But if you have a burning question and you happen to be available and you just want to get on and you want to talk about it, absolutely. The themes for them, they're themed. So the first one is really about strategies, things like that. It might be about launching, different things like that. The second week of the month is always going to be about tech. So you got like tech questions, things that you want, you got your new microphone and you like to test it out with us. We're here to test you out. We've got an hour covered for that. And then the third week is more of like general questions, just covering things that you might need to know and setting up your shows or keeping maintenance, things you might want to do. Publicity will be a significant part of that one as well.
Whatever your biggest challenge may be.
Right, it's a challenge one. And then we'll always still do on our last Friday of the month, we'll be doing our typical where we bring you a topic, and then from there we open it up to questions. So with that, we're ready to open up to questions.
So if anybody would like to ask a question, let us know. Either type something in the chat or unmute yourself and let us know, and we'll be happy.
Yeah, so excited to see all of you on the call.
Questions, concerns, comments you may have.
And if you're listed as iPhone, please tell us who you are. Hi, Agnes. How are you?
Hold on. She's still, you need to unmute yourself, or we can do it.
Yeah. There you go. We unmuted you. Hi there.
Hi, thank you. I have some basic questions. Like, I'm not really doing any podcasts. So, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by, like podcasts, because my idea was not to interview people, but just to record myself doing some talk.
Right.
that's fine.
That's the same thing. It doesn't matter because you and I talked about that before. So you're still in our strategy, our strategy phase, as you can hear here, guys. So you're still in the strategy phase, and you need to we need to have a call about that to make sure that we've got that situated for you, to making sure that we've got it in line with what you want to do. But what we talked about is you wanted to do. She's from Wendy's event, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, Wendy lived in Dinner's event. So that's why Tom's like, I don't know who Agnes is. Well, that's why
okay.
you haven't met her yet. And so, yeah, so what you want to do really is be making that topic list so we can have a chat about that. Because that's the next step.
And they would be solo casts, really is what we call them. I mean, you just be recording whatever subjects that you all, come up with and discuss and take a deep dive of sharing your knowledge and wisdom with your audience, and maybe you're going to do it through examples of some telling stories that help communicate it, or there's a number of ways to do it. I'm sure you're going to go through with her.
Right. Agnes, send me an email. You have my card. Send me an email and we'll get you on the calendar. Okay.
Okay, sure.
I think that's the best way for us to approach you. So
thank you.
Yep.
All righty. Let's see. Anybody else have Art had to leave, unfortunately. So that was nice that he popped on.
Turn the video.
I don't know that I can. Oh yeah, there we go. I can. There we go.
Right. Carolyn.
Hey, Carolyn.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
All right.
I was having a little bit of trouble hearing the thing about Alexandria. If we want in, what do we just tell you? Can you just give me the 2-second version of that?
Yes, sure. So the Smart Podcast Player, which is on her site or not yet?
I don't know. We're in her new site, right?
Yeah.
It should be there. Yeah, Carolyn Rivera, it should be
So-
there. We'll check on that.
So she noted you right now. So she's
Okay.
going to send you an email immediately. I mean, you would have gotten it anyway because we're still setting up some things on your website anyway. And so you would have had some configuration options. And so
Okay.
on how you want this player to read. So you're not familiar with it because your site doesn't already have this player yet.
Well,
That's why it's a little bit
No,
different.
it has it. It's just it hasn't been updated to the newer version yet.
Okay. So yours will be updated to the newer version, and then you'll have some options about, do you want the button to go to an email opt-in, which is what I highly recommend for you. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Some people might want to go to their book download or something like that. But for you, I think an email opt-in makes sense because you're
Yeah.
at the stage where you're trying to drive traffic in finally and get to know who your listeners are. So that's a
Exactly.
good choice for you.
Okay.
And then you have this player that's going to be able to follow people around, essentially. It'll stay at the very bottom of their page, but when they scroll, it'll be there. And it's really important for mobile, not just for, because otherwise they have to find it to turn it on and off. And,
Right.
so there's issues. But deciding whether you want that on your homepage, on the podcast page, on every page, it's a choice for you to make. And you can play with it on feedyourbrand.co. You can see what ours is, and you can kind of play with it and say, what choices would I like? And as we do it, if you don't love it, you say, hey, I just now want it on this page. You send us back an email and we'll fix that for you. So,
Okay.
but it's a new choice you get to make there, and you can decide, do you want a specific episode to play, or do you just want your latest one? So that's an option for you as well. So there's a couple of choices you get to make.
And you know what? These things can be changed in the future. Any of these decisions that you make now, try it out for a month or two. If you don't like it, make a change.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
And so the other thing is, and this is more my issue, and we can take it offline, but none of my shows are being uploaded to any of the iTunes or iHeart anymore.
Oh, because of the
Over Spreaker.
change with Spreaker. Yeah.
Right. So
What it is.
we've got to kind of get that back on
She's
track.
made a note of it. Alexandra's hearing this. She's made a note of it. She's going to look into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that Spreaker change just happened
I don't
last
know if
week.
it's the rest of the day, but I'll
Yeah.
send her an update email on Monday
All right,
about the player
we'll-
and her.
What
It's
we need to
kind of late
do-
Friday. We'll catch up on this and get it together no later than Monday. Make sure we get all your recent episodes. I think one of the issues, Carolyn, is because your episodes are done by that radio show, how are they delivering those to you, or where can we get them? That's
I just
the
talked to
connection.
them about that, and they're going to create a place for us to download the shows
Perfect.
Great,
so that we then have the capability of like moving forward
great.
until obviously, you know,
So
contract
for
runs out.
those of you listening to
Good.
this on replay, this is actually a really common problem with radio shows. And so Carolyn's has been a radio host for a while, and so
About a year,
about a year, yeah. And so when
Almost.
you transition over, they are not always cooperative, and there are some calls you have to make, and it's not obvious how to shift and how to move, and you know they're trying to lock you right back in that
But-
contract, but it's doable, and
Well-
it just means a few more phone calls and a little more handholding to make it happen.
And most of it's just, you know, onboarding really issues. It's one-time sort of setup issues to transition from doing this as a radio show, which is all too often, unfortunately, done in a way that's in the best interest of the radio show and not you, the podcast host. So what we're doing with Carolyn is helping her get the greatest value out of her show for her best interests.
Yeah,
And
moving
she's
that over.
completing her radio show contract, and then
And then I'm done.
moving away
Then I'm
from it,
done.
and
So
it's only her
over.
podcast. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. But yeah, but Alexandra will touch base with you on Monday and make sure that you're updated on where it is and how everything's moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Good questions.
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything?
Let's see. I'm just curious who's on the iPhone that
It's
is not
listed iPhone.
identified. I don't know. Let's see. We have Agnes, Carolyn, Mitch, Paul Lizelle, Shelley Whitson. So
Hi,
if that
Shelley.
was not your name, you're listed up here as iPhone.
iPhone.
We're just curious who you are.
But you may not be, if you're driving, please don't unmute
Oh,
yourself
yeah,
and tell
don't do
us. Yeah,
that.
yeah. So that's totally understandable.
But we're glad you're here regardless.
Yeah,
even though we don't know
absolutely.
who you are at the moment.
So we're
Let's see.
testing out a whole bunch of new things while we're
What are we
seeing if anyone
testing?
else. So we're testing out Instagram TV.
Yeah, that's right.
More Instagram stories. So we'll be sharing as we try these things, and when we find something that's working, we will be sharing them with you. We've been doing.
And actually, one of the things we've been Instagramming a lot about is our puppy,
Our puppy, yes.
who's in the office all the time.
She's asleep
We were
right now.
one of our marketing consultants said, "Yeah, you gotta put some Instagram stuff out about palletizing the puppy." It's like, really? Yeah, definitely. Well, so there's a few reasons why, but I'll tell you what. These puppy posts on Instagram for Palletize are getting ridiculous engagement. We did some shots where we took a microphone with the Palletize logo on its mic block and had her like
You
biting the
you can
microphone like
open
she's
Instagram and
talking.
look at it.
Into it, and it's getting crazy engagement. So
It's
go
Feed Your
figure.
Brand on Instagram.
Oh,
If
it's
they
Feed
wanna
Your
check it
Brand
out.
on Instagram.
Not
If any of you
Palletize.
want to check that out,
Yeah.
it's Feed Your Brand. It's our podcast name.
So can we steal some of that? I have a dog.
Yeah,
should.
do it. Model it. Do it.
So the other thing is, I know Carolyn knows her. We were just talking about Wendy Lipton-Dibner with Agnes. So, you know, I was mentioning this to Hal and to Wendy, and they were like, "You have to put her on your website." They were like, "You do that, and it's a tax write-off." And I was like,
Yeah,
Like,
all
you're
your dog
so funny.
expenses can be apparently legally written off
But
if they're
she needs
on
to
your
be
business website.
and registered as an emotional support dog,
Yeah.
and a workplace support dog. And I was like, that's hilarious. But yeah, leave it to Hal and Wendy to do that.
Oh,
see?
there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, yeah. So puppy pictures evidently kill it. So podcast puppy pictures even more so. So
Why
go
not?
for it if you're doing it. And you know what? We do have a couple of podcasters whose dogs regularly bark in their podcast. And if you wanted us to leave it in for some reason, you have to let us know, because our team will cut that out. But if you wanted us to leave it in because it was like, you know, it humanizes you, it makes it, you know, go ahead and let us know. We'll leave it in.
Yeah, only if you request it.
Yeah.
Ours doesn't really bark much, but
No, she does, just
well,
at
at
inopportune
times, but-
moments. Yeah. What usually happens is you hear in the background of a few of ours, because the team doesn't have an easy time, is she has a squeak toy because she's still a puppy, and you'll hear squeak, 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 squeak in the background of our podcast.
Because we have her in the office and where we record. So,
Yeah.
I mean, usually she's quiet, but
Yeah.
yeah, we've had that occasionally.
Squeaking
yeah,
toys.
squeaking toy.
So yeah, so we've been testing out some things. Instagram's one of them, and we've had some engagement there. We have what else have we been doing that we've been testing out? I've been testing out some new ways to do articles, places to feed them, so things that we've been trying there. We've been doing with the Center of Influence. So if you get on Feed Your Brand's podcast, if you regularly listen to us, I'm doing some interesting things with other podcasters there. So it's called the Center of Influence, Feed Your Brand Center of Influence podcast. Like, it's all a part of it, but it's like a subset of it. So there are certain episodes, and we have the icon changed so you'll know it's a Center of Influence, and usually the title says it in it. But on Center of Influence, I'm interviewing top podcasters across the country and getting tips from them on 5 different things: how they get great guests, how they increase engagement, how they monetize their show, and how they produce professionally. Like, so I've been asking them the same 5 questions, and each of them give great tips. And so we created infographics for each one of those sets of tips. And the benefit of that also is that we expect that BuzzFeed is going to pick up a series of tips. So it might be 5 different podcasters who all say these 5 things about how to get great guests. And so that's something that's going to be rolling up into BuzzFeed the more of them I do. And so far I've only done 5 interviews, I think. And articles are coming out in Authority magazine, and then these roll-ups will end up in BuzzFeed eventually. So, it's all happening together. But I've been trying this model out of it. And then when we hit 25 shows, we're going to spin it off into its own podcast. So this is something you guys can do as well, and take some of these tips. So I'm trying it. We're seeing how it works. And when we get some success stories and we realize what's going on with it, we'll share exactly how we do it with you, so you guys can try it as well. If you want to explore, maybe a specific topic area, or you want to explore. So we have a couple of podcasters who did that. Is it Paul Noddings who did the 6 conversations?
No, that was Robert Kandell.
Robert Kandell. So Robert Kandell did these 6 conversations between a man and a woman, and he spun it off.
A small
series, and then he put them in his regular feed, and then he spun it off into its own little show entity, so you could listen to them all in a row and not have them mixed up between his regular episodes. And so it's a nice little way to do something like that if you want to, create content that is a series of things, but you don't want to just do it all at once and then roll it out as a big thing. You can roll it out over time and then move them out of your main feed and into their own.
Well, and remember, this is going to be unique to those people that are hosted on Podetize. But on Podetize, you get up to 5 shows for your 1 monthly hosting subscription. If you're on another service like Libsyn or somebody, if you want to do that, unfortunately, you have to pay a whole nother monthly subscription for that additional show identity on iTunes. So it's not as cheap for you to do, but might still be worth it, even for the additional expense, because you get more exposure. I mean, if you make your show descriptions similar and contain a lot of the same keywords between your first show and then this new spinoff, when people search on those terms on iTunes, you're going to have 2 shows that come up in the search results instead of 1. And we have some people like Scott Carson has like 5 at least, I think different show identities. And when 4?
One I haven't split off yet because
all right, a 5th one is coming. He has 4. So when you search on anything regarding distressed note investing, where one of his, his main show would come up, you get about 8 or 10, I guess, depending on if you're using the app or the desktop app of iTunes or whatever, prefer service you subscribe to. There's usually, a number of podcasts that come up, but then I'm losing my train of thought. You 4, he dominates 4 of those search results are his show or his shows. And so from a marketing perspective, you get a lot more exposure, and wow, this guy's got all these different shows. I want to give him a try and forget these other ones. What are they, right? So it makes a lot of sense.
Right. And then if any of you are take a hiatus because some, spring break happened, summer's coming, that's something else I want to mention to you is that we have found that because of some of the bandwidth issues of our phones and how the players are working, that if you go more than 30 days without posting, many of them stop feeding to your subscribers. And so we've seen people who then all of a sudden have a dip off, and we were like, well, I took a month off. Well, you took one day too many off before you posted again. So keeping that in mind, that you don't want to tip into that, plan that ahead for your holidays. So if you're going to take summer vacation and you want to take your summer season off, plan to have a couple of periodic shows that are just going to come out every 2 weeks or so, or every 3 weeks, and just make sure that you're keeping your feed active so that that doesn't happen to you. Yeah. And then we've covered this in a Feed Your Brand episode, but just in case you didn't listen to it, do not do replays. It will annoy your subscribers.
We find it really doesn't, it's not received very well by most listeners.
Yeah, do not do
rerun
replays.
Episodes.
Yeah. So don't do that.
The only exception to that is if you do a compilation episode of like when you hit, like we have a podcaster, Dustin Matthews with Get Well Fit podcast, doing his 100th episode. He's actually doing a compilation episode of clips from his top, how many, 10 episodes, 10. Something like that. That's an exception. That's a different approach. It's sort of a highlight best of, and that can be a really good thing for, as you're going from episode 101 to 200, right. That, people finding your show later might start there with that episode 100 and get a good cross section of right. What your episodes are about.
Right. Actually, we should mention this because Carolyn's on, but the advice I had given to Dustin was to do his 101 episode, 101, his 101st episode, do it as if it was a number 1 episode all over again, because eventually he's doing so many shows so fast, he's going to max out and hit over the 300 episode threshold that iTunes allows. And so I recommended to it because he may want to take that first 100 now that he's capped it with this compilation. And when he hits the next 100, he may want to take them and spin them off at that time, just to kind of get people used to the fact that you'll have 100 series. And because he can have a second volume. And so going ahead and making your 101 kind of an intro episode again. But for Carolyn, because you're moving over from the radio into your own entity, it might be a great idea to just kind of treat it like a new introduction, letting people know where you are, why you're doing it, and giving you just that one episode. It may not be as long as the other ones, but kind of just giving that interim. It might be a great idea for you. And for anyone who's coming up on 101, like thinking about that, it's not a bad idea to just do it. And then when you roll it out, you don't have to worry about like, what's in this place and why is it cut? And it's like weird that 100 episodes are over in here in volume 1 and so many weird episodes are in volume 2. So,
and in Carolyn's case, you're going to do like 50 or 52, something like that. So 150, whatever.
Whatever your
really
number
matter.
is for you, it makes sense though, because there's going to be this transition of the format of the show is going to change in the new way, because you're going to want to do it different.
Well, you won't be stopping every 15 minutes for a commercial like you do on the radio show, right? So
yeah, so you might as well take advantage of that.
And one last question. What is the best time limit for podcasts?
Number one
Most
question we get.
Asked question, and
everywhere.
There's no absolute right or wrong answer for that, unfortunately.
So some of our clients do swear by the under 10-minute thing, do these short little things, and they do, but those ones do better if they do them daily. So like if they're doing many, many in a row, because then what I believe happens is that their listeners wait until the beginning of the week or the weekend, and then they binge listen to all 5 of them in a row, right? And so it makes more sense that way, because now it's long enough to consume and worth it for them. But what we really find is that it's okay to mix it up. If you have let's say you live stream on a Monday and you do 10 minutes. Great. Use that episode. On Tuesday you're doing, or Wednesday you're doing your own topic show. Topic ones where it's just you talking, 25, 30 minutes, right around there is really good timeline. If you feel like you just, it was just such an urgent, important thing and you needed to go longer, right? That's okay. You know, do not cut yourself off, but also don't go on and on when you know you shouldn't be, right? Just, you know, say, you know what, I hit this point and I'm good here. If you guys have something.
Yeah, what I tell people is when the subject feels complete, end the episode. Don't end it prematurely just because you want to keep it less than 20 minutes, and don't stretch it to 45 minutes if you really feel like it's complete in 30.
Right.
Make the episode as long as it needs to be to you feel that you've covered the topic. And if it's an interview episode, same way. If you feel, hey, you've covered it, you don't have any more questions for the guest, end the interview.
Yeah.
Same sort of situation.
So for interviews, though, we find typically interviews are around 30 minutes is really good. You've tended to cover it really well in 30 minutes, and you should have a few minutes or 5 minutes of you doing an introduction on the beginning, and you should definitely have a little post discussion after you thank them and end.
Sort of your takeaways, final thoughts, you know,
right.
after the interview without your guest there. So that's in that sort of format, we recommend you record the interview first, say goodbye to your guest on Zoom or whatever you're recording them on. Then immediately, while it's fresh in your mind, record that intro and record those final thoughts. And then our team cuts it together in the right order into a complete episode.
Right. But if you are doing it in sort of a live stream format, okay, so what I do is treat it just like you're doing that middle section, at that interview section, you do the live stream. Still record a separate intro and outro, like after Zoom ends, you know, just start a new Zoom and just you, and just do that and tell the team to cut the chit chat at the very beginning, or don't, and just let it happen anyway. Just repeat it anyway. Yeah. And so that way you don't feel like you have to do a long introduction on someone. You can do a short one that way and just say, you know, I did that with Kevin Harrington. I just had him on this week, and I was just like, guys, if you don't know who Kevin Harrington is, you don't deserve to be in the product launching world. You're not paying attention, right? And he laughed about it, but I knew I was going to do a real intro separately. And so I knew I was going to hit on all of the things that make it important. And we did do it in the interview anyway, like you talked about his experience. So, you know, you can do it that way, and where they just feel like they were introduced enough, but when you're going to do your episode, there will be a more formal interview. But the reason we also like doing the intro after is because people give you bios, and then while you're in the call, you find out something so relevant and so important in the interview that you really wished you had said at the beginning, because maybe somebody would have tuned in and stayed tuned in because of that. And so you have the energy and excitement from having just finished the interview, and you have a little more information or context as to what in their bio is really important. So it may not be important that they went to this college, but this part might be even more relevant than you thought it was going to be. And so that's always a good way to go about doing it. And that way you're really not citing a resume every single time. And so, so good. And so that sometimes will end you up, that total ends you up around 45 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes. So, and that's a really good time. That's a really good length for an interview. Going an hour, like I had an interview with Lillian Walker and we went an hour, but she was like fascinating and I could not ask cool questions about her. I think that's the longest one I've done in a really long time. I mean, I don't think I've done one that long, but it needed to happen. I mean, she was just so good.
And here's the thing, really, I wouldn't worry about the length. First of all, when we produce an episode, it's flat rate pricing. So whether you're doing it 20 minutes or doing it an hour, it doesn't cost any different. So keep that in mind. But the reality is, if people only have a half an hour to listen, because that's their commute, they're driving to work, they'll either listen to half in the morning and half on the way home, or they'll listen at double speed and get it all in an hour-long episode in that half hour. And they do it, and it sounds actually fairly normal. It doesn't sound that much different when somebody listens to you on double speed. If you think I'm wrong,
like
just try it.
Space,
most apps, like your Apple Podcast app, they have a 2x option when you're listening, and just hit it, and you can hear how it sounds for other shows. It's not, and especially if you talk kind of slow like me, Tracy speaks
I'm
much
fast.
faster words per minute than I do. With me, I think people like to listen to me on double speed just so I sound normal, really. But anyway.
Carolyn's laughing at you there. So
Wow.
anyway, those are just some tips about how, about length. I really don't want people stressing about it.
No,
We have all types on our platform, and there's so much variety in what's successful and what's not. It is not a hard and fast rule.
Authenticity is what listeners want. So be yourself. If you're not being yourself, they're gonna know.
Yeah.
And if you're, that's why if you're stretching it to fill time, they're gonna know. They're probably gonna email you and say, you're really beating a dead horse with this one. You could have ended that one 10 minutes early.
They will tell you.
They will. And hopefully mostly positive and constructive emails than unhappy ones.
So that's what happened to us in the early days. When we did our first show, we were advised to do 20 minutes because that was a commute time. Like that's what we were 20, 25 minutes, right? That was the average commute time. And we were told that. And so we did that in the very beginning. And the first thing people said was, we want more. And we were doing 5 days a week. So they wanted more, meant they wanted longer. And so that's what we did. And most of those were the interview episodes. Really, they just wanted deeper dives. And so that's what we started to do. And that's really what we found for most people, for the most success stories that we hear, that's what it is. They're not as programmatic about it. I would say those, though, that take ads, those are an hour long because of ads. That's because that's what the advertising company wants. So if you go into one of these programs like a Castbox or one of these places where they're going to place ads on your show, like at that top level, and most shows don't qualify in the early days, but when you do that, they tell you have to be an hour. And so that's where some people believe that monetization meant an hour. But it's because radio shows, all of these places, in order for them to squeeze in enough ads over time and not have them be too close together, that's what they do.
But we never found that. And we've monetized our first show. We monetized it with ads. And
we would do two a show.
We would do 2 ads in every show, and that's it. Yeah. One early on that's 15 seconds and one in the middle that was 30 seconds. And it didn't matter really how long the episode was. And, it depends on your approach to it. And, Tracy's talking about a serious media buying company that has criteria that they've promised to an advertiser and they need to deliver on. That's a little different. And maybe there'll be some opportunities to do that for many of you, and that would be great. And maybe you'll have to consider whatever those requirements are at the time. But hopefully not. I would always say don't compromise the integrity of your show. If they want to advertise, it's because they want to reach your audience that is within a certain niche, and they'll accept advertising on your show, whatever you make that, whatever you're willing to let them do.
Yeah, and there is also one other thing I should mention. We're working with a network. Yeah, we're about done. But we're working with a network that's coming on the platform, and they are looking for shows in a very specific type. And so as your shows get started, or if you're new to the platform, I'm monitoring them all the time, and I'm going to be suggesting you into the network. And so there's nothing that changes about how your show operates. It's just that you'd be required to put an ad in for another podcast. And so it's like a cooperative. So you would advertise for another podcaster, one per show per week.
One per week.
One per week, yeah. So one show per week. That's all you have to do, and one ad spot, and you would be advertising for somebody else's podcast. So over the year, you'd advertise.
At the same time, though, isn't it that your show would also be promoted on others on that network, right?
And so the reason why I'm being really cautious about all of you is I want to make sure you're going to benefit from it. The last thing you want is, a health and wellness podcast on something that's all about like hacking and, code or something. Like it just doesn't make sense, right? And so the profile of people is not the same.
Well, let's also be very clear. This podcast network is in its infancy.
It is. It's early on. Yep.
Doesn't exist yet. This is a business plan this company wants to do. And if they achieve their goals, which is still an if, then there may be an opportunity. And we're certainly, as it applies to make sense for any of you that work with us, we're going to, ask you if you'd like to participate. And if so, then serve you up to that network. It would just be another outlet.
Yeah,
for your
another
show.
promotional outlet for you. So
Yeah.
anyway, like I said, we're always testing these things and really want to bring them to you. And as always, you guys, if you have questions and you're not on this call, you're listening to it on replay, hello@podetize.com. Ask
I'm
away.
sure you know how to reach out to us
Yeah.
anyway. And if not that one.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Well, hey, thanks everybody. This is it for April. I can't believe April's
know,
over
wow.
by the middle of next week, last Friday in April. So you'll be getting emails about the schedule of those other webinars we're doing if you're interested. And otherwise, we'll be back the last Friday of May for another great session like this. This was fun. Thank you, Carolyn, for jumping in and participating. Thank you, Agnes and Mitch and everybody else for participating live, or at least
listening in
live, watching. Thanks so much.
Okay.
We'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.